Hello guys, it's me, Greed here, and today, in my opinion, Overwatch is in a new golden age. Obviously, there are problems with the game. Skin distribution is incredibly lackluster, and some heroes like Sombra need a rework. But overall, I think Overwatch is in an amazing state, and I don't think people talk about it enough. I just want the devs to know they're doing great. Objectively, I think every hero should get a unique legendary every couple seasons. But besides that, I don't really have complaints. Well, Lilac, Sylveon, I do. So, obviously, Overwatch has a lot of problems, and I talk about a lot of those problems. Now, obviously, he says Overwatch is in its second golden age, and if by second golden age he means golden shower age, then I would agree, because we're being pissed on basically every patch. And okay, so why is Overwatch not in its second golden age? Now, obviously, attributing current day Overwatch to older Overwatch when it was actually very good is extremely offensive to old Overwatch. So let's stop doing that first of all. The first reason Overwatch isn't in its golden age is 5v5. Now, I've explained 5v5 a million times. I've explained why it's so terrible. And a lot of people are like, well, if 5v5 is so bad, then why are people still playing it? It's because it's the premier mode. It's the main mode of the game. It gets the most attention. It's on the front of the splash screen. All the promotional art you see is 5v5. The game is advertised as 5v5. The game is bounced around being 5v5. Everything points towards 5v5 being the main mode. And people are going to play that main mode. And some of my proof for that is GS Raider recently came back to Overwatch, and he literally explained the reason he didn't queue 6v6 for the majority of his time playing it after he came back was the fact that 6v6 wasn't the main mode and that 5v5 was, like I said people would do. I said people weren't going to play 6v6 because it's not the main mode. GS Raider comes back, doesn't play 6v6 because it's the main mode, right? Because it's not the main mode, I mean. A big problem with 5v5, and again, I've talked about this a million times, is obviously the super tank problem, where there is only one tank, and because there is only one tank, that tank needs to be extremely powerful, and because he needs to be extremely powerful, it means that he needs more resources, therefore the supports need to be stronger in order to keep them alive, and also keep themselves alive, because they don't have an off tank to help peel for them anymore, therefore you massively buff the support heroes and the tank heroes, and you're forced to put DPS into a position where they're not allowed to be powerful, because if they are, it means they'd be too easy to kill the backline, which means the tank would be too easy to deal with because there wouldn't be enough resources in the game, right? That's just one of the many reasons why 5v5 is objectively a broken game mode in a hero shooter like that, because it is asymmetrical. The resource distribution between the teams and the players is not even, which makes the game extremely confusing to play, because at one moment you could be getting all the resources as a tank and be completely invincible, and the next second you might get slightly less resources and turn into paste because you were counterpicked and your hero's inherent weakness was simply abused because they picked a better hero at killing you than you picked at killing them. That's a 5v5 problem, right? Another problem that makes it so Overwatch isn't in its golden age is the queue times. The queue times in this game are terrible, and it's because of how many modes we have. Like, let's just think about how many modes there are. We have 5v5 role queue, we have 6v6 open queue, we have mystery heroes, that's quick play. Then for ranked, we have 5v5 role queue ranked, 6v6 open queue ranked, we also have Stadium, the unranked version, and the ranked version of Stadium. We then also have the arcade modes, so that's Overwatch Classic, Total Mayhem, all of those other arcade modes that some people will play. Then we have the Workshop custom games, which occupy a large portion of the player base as well. So things like FSJQS, which is Ralph's 6v6 code. Then you have things that are doing like Tinder Watch. Then you have people playing just other goofy game modes, right? Just think of how many modes that is for people to play and for people to split their time between. Then, not only do you have that massive massive amount of game modes that people could be queuing and that are stealing players' times, you also have to understand that when you do queue into these premier modes, because of the fact that there is so few players queuing each mode because there are so many modes, it's going to inherently make the matchmaking quality lower and the queue times higher. So you have to queue for longer to get a lower quality game of Overwatch. And in Overwatch's current balance state, that I'm also going to complain about, with there being minimal carry potential in the game as there used to be, it means that even if you do get bad teammates, your chances of carrying those bad teammates is lower because there is just simply lower carry potential in the game because there's more things to deny your potential kills, there's more things to sustain through your kills, there's more burst damage that could potentially one-tap you. Even if you're making a correct decision, you might get punished for it anyway. There is just too much anti-skill in the game that can simply beat you by existing, as opposed to there being lots of skill in the game that you should be able to solo your way into a win with. Back in old Overwatch, I've said this a million times, there was a reason you could look at the top of the leaderboard and there would be 4,700 players and 4,800 players that were averaging 70 to 80% win rates throughout an entire season because they were just good enough to do that. If they were in the game, there was enough carry potential for them to full solo carry games. There just was, because they were that good at the game. That doesn't exist in Overwatch 2 anymore. Go check the leaderboards now. The highest win rate you'll see on someone that's actually played a lot of games, 55, 60%. Why is it that, although apparently everyone says, oh, 5v5 must have more carry potential because you're a larger percentage of the team, there's less players, meaning a kill is more impactful, then if that's the case, why is it that in 5v5 people's win rates are much closer to 50% as opposed to they were in Overwatch 1, where win rates could be much lower than 50% and much higher because your win rate was directly influenced by your own skill level and how well you were playing, because there was solo carry potential. However, apparently in Overwatch 2, where there's so much carry potential, everyone just so happens to have a 50% win rate. That's really weird how that works. I don't really understand how people continue to make this argument when there's so many ways of proving it not to be true, but people will obviously talk until the ends of the earth about how Overwatch 2 apparently has more carry potential. Yeah, talk about carry potential when I make a perfect play and it gets Suzu'd because there was no physical way for me to force a Suzu prior to that on certain characters, because you have to commit engagement and burn resources to get a Suzu and beat down a cooldown trade after you burn that Suzu. Therefore, if the carry's playing properly, neither you nor the carry are contributing to the game because you're both just continuously rotating your cooldowns being burnt by each other. Therefore, neither of you are doing anything apart from the carry that may randomly one-tap you because their character is overbuffed to the moon. Like the Ilari character that I'm playing now. Ludicrously overpowered. Relf disagrees, but Relf is wrong. So, next thing is obviously the game mode and map slop that we've got. Now, I've got this weird opinion that people on Twitter seem to disagree with, where they have the belief that Flashpoint and Push are good game modes. I genuinely couldn't tell you why. There's this weird thing on Twitter where if you think payload maps are good, you're low rank and a casual or something. I don't know where this comes from. This is a horrible take. I don't know. Like King of the Hill and the payload maps and the hybrid maps are the most competitive maps. They just are. They're simply the most fair. There's the most amount of skill expression. You play the most amount of map when you're actually doing it. There's more opportunities to do things. It takes more about understanding the map and so on, whereas Flashpoint and Push and so on are very linear experiences where you kind of don't really have to think for yourself. You're just kind of told where to go, what to do whenever you're doing it, which makes it more of a casual mode in my opinion. So I don't really understand why people think the Flashpoint and Push are so good. I hate Flashpoint and I hate Push. I primarily hate Push because it's a mode that's specifically made to go as long as possible. It's similar to Clash in that sense, where you're not meant to win the map. You're meant to win based on the advantage that you have, based on the fact that you've pushed it farther, not that you capped it all the way to the end, which is just terrible game design. The closer you get to winning, the bigger of an advantage the enemy team gets because the map becomes more defensive for them, so it becomes easier to win fights as you're losing. So it just becomes this weird stalemate match where the team that gains the advantage at the start of the game and pushes it the first 60 meters or so is just in the lead for the next 10 minutes, because whenever they get back to that 60-meter lead, they probably lose because they're a massive map advantage, because the map is so favored towards the defenders. But the enemy team that has that big defender advantage is so bad that they're going to lose every fight on neutral mapping when it gets back to the middle, so that the robot just ping-pongs back and forth between in the enemy team and back to the neutral position, because of how drastically unfair the map and mode is. People are going to go, oh, it's to prevent steamrolling. How about you prevent steamrolling by increasing the carry potential in the game? Maybe you could do that. Maybe you make it so that the match quality isn't so terrible. Maybe you make it that the supports aren't so ludicrously overpowered that they can infinitely sustain through higher skill play or mechanical execution on certain things. Like, why is it, for example, that there's so many poke characters and poke abilities in the game that are so easily able to deny dive, which is objectively the hardest thing to do in the game, especially coordinated as a team? Like, why is it that I can commit dive with me and 2 other guys, and it can be shut down by an Alari outburst just pressing a button, or a Suzu just pressing a button, or Coach Gun just pressing a button? It makes no sense to me that the objectively more difficult composition and playstyle is easier to shut down than the poke slop that's already really good right now. And that would be my other claim. Poke slop is obviously ruining the game, but I've talked about that a billion times, and I'm not going to anymore. I love you all. I hope you have a good day. Overwatch is not in a golden age, it's in the piss age. I love you. Have a good one. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye.